June is Pride Month. For years, Pride has been so much more than a parade. It's been a movement rooted in visibility, resilience, and the fight for equality. From the legacy of the Stonewall riots to today's celebrations filled with music, art, remembrance, and activism, Pride Month honors the stories, struggles, and achievements of the LGBTQ+ community while looking ahead to the work that's still left to do. Across America and around the world, millions are gathering this year not to only celebrate identity and love, but to stand together in a time many say calls for unity, courage, and pride, louder than ever before. Celebrations for Pride can look very different depending on where you live. In some states, Pride has never been bigger, growing crowds and expanded protections for LGBTQ+ communities. While in others, celebrations are being scaled back or forced to change because of new laws and political pressure. Hello, I'm Devin Patton with an in-depth look at Pride Month, the history, where it's facing backlash, and where it's thriving. Pride Month was born out of protests, and more than 50 years later, that legacy is front and center again. In Tennessee, an adult cabaret law aimed at drag performances has pushed some Pride organizers to relocate events, despite parts of the law being tied up in court. WTOL reporter Sophia Pericone has more on a similar bill in Ohio and its effect on Pride celebrations and the LGBTQ+ community.
House Bill 249, co-sponsored by Representative Josh Williams, narrows in on indecent exposure. The first part of the bill changes legal language. Instead of criminalizing indecent exposure of a private part, it would criminalize indecent exposure of a private area.
The individual was able to go into a restroom and expose his genitalia to young girls, or at least attempt to. And the case said that essentially he was too fat to expose his private part. And therefore, since the girls didn't see his actual genitalia, it wasn't indecent exposure.
But it's the second part of the bill that has drag queens like Sugar Vermont concerned.
If Representative Williams's proposed bill goes through, drag could only be performed at adult cabarets, and that's completely ridiculous.
The bill broadens the definition of adult cabaret performers to include those exhibiting a gender identity different from their biological sex. That includes drag queens. It then says those performers would be restricted to adult spaces like bars and nightclubs.
We even created a carve-out that says specifically, or in a private residence. So in a private business that's labeled as an adult cabaret or a private residence. So it makes it where you can still have your adult entertainment so long as children are not present.
Sugar says it would affect her performances, many of which aren't held in places the bill considers adult cabaret.
When I do a drag show anymore, it is generally to help little kids with cancer through the work that I do through the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, or to raise money for All's In and the Alzheimer's Association for elders with dementia.
Similar bills have failed to hold up in other states, but Williams says 249 isn't like those. He says it prohibits adult cabaret in front of kids if it's obscene according to Ohio Revised Code, but it's already illegal for anyone to perform obscenities in front of minors.
I'm not saying, hey, drag performances are automatically obscene, therefore kids can't be present. That's what other states tried to do. I didn't do that. I said all adult performers, whether you're getting paid or not, if you're performing for an audience, just make sure kids aren't there if your conduct rises to the level of obscenity.
In Texas, along with several other southern and Midwestern states, there are dozens of bills also targeting drag shows, along with pride flags or LGBTQ+ expressions in public places. The proposed laws have created an uncertainty, especially for smaller and rural pride events. Robert De La Garza has more from Texas.
The team at Tala Area Gays Plus spent all day Friday at the WT Brookshire Conference Center, prepping for what they hope is the biggest turnout yet. Their goal? Create a space where everyone feels welcome, celebrated, and seen.
Yeah, it feels bigger.
This is the second year Rose City Pride is happening at the Brookshire Center, after more than a decade at Pride in the Park.
It feels more important to make sure that everybody knows that we are here, even with everything happening, like we're still part of your community.
And this year, President of TAG, Billy Diaz, says Pride hits different, with ongoing fights for human rights across Texas and the country.
It seems like in this world, things are really hard right now, and a lot of times even just being with the person that you love can get you looked at in the wrong way.
Tensions have especially risen since President Donald Trump took office for his second term, signing an executive order in his first 90 days stating the federal government will only recognize two genders.
It is a step backwards, but you take two steps forwards and you're always going to take a step back.
That's how I fight it, is by pushing forward and making this event happen so that no matter what's happening, everybody knows that you're not alone.
And in Texas, new laws are making it harder for trans people to access care or keep their identities recognized.
If they don't take the legislation away that they've granted, then we're okay. If they do, then we just have to keep fighting.
A lifelong East Texan, Mickey Jones Holloway, says she never imagined something like this growing up.
There was never a time when I was growing up that you could have anything like this. Not anywhere in East Texas.
But Pride Month and this weekend are more than just a party. Organizers say it's about honoring those who came before and reminding everyone this fight is year-round.
It lets everybody see that there are everyday places you can go, not just one day a year.
In Florida, new state laws there targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion already has real impacts, affecting simple things like what you can walk on. Zach Wilcox with First Coast News in Jacksonville sharing some insight.
Walking into Park Place Lounge, you're bound to cross over a rainbow crosswalk. Lounge owners painted this on their own private property because under a new mandate, Florida can no longer have rainbow crosswalks on public property. And an artist in 5 Points is hoping displays like this are colorful enough to catch some attention. Like several crosswalks all across Jacksonville, this one in 5 Points used to feature a rainbow of colors. However, FDOT mandated they be painted over, saying in part in a memorandum that non-standard markings, quote, can lead to distractions or misunderstandings, jeopardizing both driver and pedestrian safety.
When the crosswalks got painted over, we found that there was a need for more rainbows in 5 Points.
Since public sidewalks can no longer feature rainbows, artist Mayor Mason found something that can. Old payphones.
The payphones are just basically litter at this point. They're all abandoned.
Mason says the 5 Points Merchant Association commissioned her art while also adding rainbow banners throughout 5 Points. And River City Pride says it's just the beginning, as a campaign called Will Not Be Erased started raising money for 3 new Pride murals in 5 Points, Brooklyn, and downtown. And they're also encouraging businesses to do what they can on their property, like Park Place's Rainbow Crosswalk.
We're just trying to get more art in 5 Points, more weird stuff. We need some fun, cool, interesting, make you stop and go, what is that?
Although we may not see the return of rainbow crosswalks anytime soon with the state mandate, Mason is hoping the ban could actually lead to more rainbows in art than ever before in 5 Points. Or, at the very least, on old payphones.
And they're everywhere, they're abundant, so I'm just gonna keep doing them.
These art displays went up in time for the Pride Parade, which was this past weekend through Riverside, and for the LGBTQ+ History Month, which runs through the end of October.
Also happening in Florida, state tourism funding was pulled from Key West Pride, one of the most well-known Pride events in the country. A move local leaders say threatens both the visibility and the local economy. Organizers say Pride is still happening, but often with more security, fewer performances, and less public support. When we come back, we're going to chat with a global activist, a gay double-leg amputee who says Pride is still a protest and accessibility is still a battle. His message for anyone who thinks Pride is just a parade. Welcome back. To end the news now with this special focus on Pride Month. I'm Devin Patton. As Pride Month approaches, the celebration might look a little different depending on where you live. Louder in some places, quieter in others. Earlier, we spoke to an activist, an author, and motivational speaker, Spencer West, who says Pride is not just a parade.
The first Pride that I ever went to was in Salt Lake City, of all places. And I remember feeling the beautiful solidarity there, but also learning from a lot of the queer elders there who, had fought so hard for the minimum rights that we had then. And really learning about, that Pride started as a protest in 1969 at the Stonewall riots, where the queer community was tired of being pushed into the shadows and fought back against the raids that were happening in the few spaces that they were gathering in. And that's really what Pride is and why we have it every year, is for that protest. And it's important now more than ever as we watch this administration try to do the same thing. These things aren't new with, book bans and and changing legislation, like that's something we've been fighting forever. But it's now more important to really lean into that protest side of things and to control the narrative and to take the narrative back and to fight against the transphobia. And one of the things that I think is so cool about this time is that, you know, we have access to social media. You know, I've got over 4 million followers on TikTok. And so they can try to silence us with laws, but I still have the control of my narrative. I can still show up and tell my story online and try to fight a lot of the misinformation and misrepresentation that everyone, but specifically the administration, is putting out there.
What should a Pride celebration in a community look like? And also, what should it sound like?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing and the thing that I have felt in Pride is that everyone feels welcome. And for that kid or that person that hasn't been able to say out loud who they are or be able to live them authentically as themselves because of the community they live in or maybe the household that they live in, Pride needs to be the space where they can show up and be themselves. And for those 1 or 2 days, experience what Pride looks like and what being queer can mean and the dreams that people can dream. I think that's one of the most beautiful things that Pride does is it makes you feel seen and it shows that there's a community there that loves you. I think it should sound like love and acceptance and celebration and fun. And then I also think what it should look like is it needs to be a bit more accessible, not just for, you know, wheelchair users, but for folks that are deaf, folks that are blind, folks that need sensory things, having ASL interpreters. Like those are the things that we need to start incorporating. But at its core, it needs to be a place where people can feel like they can show up as themselves with full safety.
How have you been able to incorporate what you've been able to do with your life into helping others when it comes to not only being queer, but also disability?
Yeah, you know, I wrote a new book that recently came out called Breaking Free, and I talk about this intersectionality of those two identities and how they were both really hard for me to learn into and to claim. And then once I did, what was really important for me is to use them to educate other folks on not only how they can be allies, but all the barriers that exist in society that prevent us from fully showing up as ourselves. And so, you know, one of the things I talk about in my book is turning passion into purpose. Yes. And how do we bridge those two things? And so that's what I try to do with social media and the book that I just wrote. So that's what I try to do.
You know, when it comes to civil rights, I think there's a time when you shift that focus from institutionalized things and changing laws to changing people's hearts. How do you do that? How do you change people to the point where they're saying, yes, I will include you? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like learning how to dispel that fear that, you know, people really try to instill and we're seeing happening right now in our country in the United States. And, you know, Harvey Milk said it best. You know, he encouraged everyone to come out in the 60s and 70s because he said, if everyone comes out, then it's harder to hate us because you'll know us, because we're the person that serves you coffee. We're the person that works at the library. We're the person that waited on you at that restaurant. We're the person that does your taxes. We're the person that passes you on the street and says hello. And it's a lot harder to hate someone when you know them, when we're your neighbors or your friends or your uncles or your teachers or all of those things. And so I think it starts with that, this idea that like, you know me. And this other person is saying these awful things about me that you know isn't true. So if you have someone in your life that you know is queer, it's a lot harder to hate us in that regard. So I think it has to be in conjunction with both, because then that leads people to vote differently, because they're like, oh, I don't want Spencer or this person that's in my life to have to suffer because this politician thinks this or this person thinks that. So I really think it's really important to be able to share our stories with people, because that breaks down that barrier of fear and hate when you know someone.
So true. Very true. What does the LGBTQ plus movement need to do differently, or maybe it's a change or add something to avoid leaving disabled queer people behind?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, and this is like everything in life, but specifically at Pride, like stop treating us as an afterthought. disabled people exist, and we are the largest marginalized group in the world. And we're also the only marginalized group that everyone will experience at some point in their lives, either temporarily or permanently, whether that's now or as we age. So accessibility really is an important issue for everyone. So not only keeping us in mind for like physically making spaces and experiences accessible, but also we need to be on the planning committee. We need to be on the board. We need that disability representation to start thinking about all these things, to have that lens, because we don't know what we don't know. And when you're doing drag performances, when you're doing panels, make sure that there's disabled talent and representation there too. So we're hearing from everyone because we want to be able to see ourselves in the community. We know that we exist, but oftentimes, it's the really attractive white gay men with all the muscles that are getting a lot of the attention.
You said that simply showing up as queer, disabled person is an act of protest. What barriers still make that protest harder than it should be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple things. I think it's, a bit of the physical barriers that exist. I think it's people's attitudes around disabled folks. As I was mentioning earlier, in the gay community in particular, there's a specific body type that people are interested in. And if you don't fit that mold, then you're not welcome here, or that you're not considered, dateable in some regards. So I think it's sort of what we were talking about earlier about coming out, is changing people's attitudes and minds about disabled folks, and understanding that we want to be a part of the community too.
Welcome back to this In the News Now focus on Pride Month. We now shift our focus on the positive movements across the United States. In New York, state leaders have expanded Pride Month, funding and boosting LGBTQ+ health and wellness programs and support, with New York City Pride remaining one of the largest celebrations in the world. Our New York station WGRZ's Rob Hackford dives into that tradition.
As we roll down this unfamiliar road. Since 2001, the Buffalo Gay Men's Chorus has been the voice of pride in the Nickel City. And for the last 6 years, Robert Strauss has been conducting.
1, 2, 3, and
just know you're not alone.
We're the Buffalo Gay Men's Chorus, but we're not all gay and we're not all men. It's more about the mission of being accepting for the LGBTQIA+ community.
And sharing a message through music.
Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear.
It's moving in a different way, to sing with others and to sing for people, and to harmonize in that way, to blend our differences together and use them as strength.
A spectrum of voices.
Just know you're not alone.
Whether queer, gay, trans, or an ally, the chorus is 50 members strong, and Strauss says more than ever important.
I feel like, again, in this political climate, there are maybe terrible things that are happening, but it's empowering our allies to speak up to us and to others. And that is amazing.
The music and lyrics they choose and craft equally as meaningful as their existence, with themes of overcoming struggle and, like each concert, bringing people together.
Well, I think there are a lot of things that are special about the Buffalo Gay Men's Chorus. They make incredible music. The message of their music is really powerful. Our act of singing together is activism.
Cages or wings, which do you prefer?
But I have to say, it's the heart. They are supportive of each other. They are welcoming, they are loving. They become a chosen family for everyone, and maybe particular for those who need a family.
A family that's growing.
Since the Buffalo Gay Men's Chorus is a group of tenors and basses who sing for social justice, that we wanted to create a place for sopranos and altos who want to sing for social justice, so that we are being as inclusive as we can be.
The new group, the Nickel City Treblemakers, debuted with their partner chorus on May 17th, 2025. Advocating and adding new perspective, they are already 35 singers strong.
Sort of proves that there was a need, and because our music has a message, because our music empowers people, our music, the words inspire people to action and to live their own authentic lives. They get to see that. I get to see them responding to that. I get to see them knowing that they've made a difference, and I think that's really cool.
Two voices, one goal, urging for social justice in Buffalo.
On the West Coast, states like California, Washington, and Oregon have doubled down on protections. California's Attorney General now releasing an annual State of Pride report, framing pride as both a celebration and civil rights priority. In the city of San Diego, it's growing in more ways than one.
Surrounded by LGBTQ+ leaders and allies, Mayor Todd Gloria welcomes the historic exhibit.
A lot of bravery.
The exhibit is a partnership with Lambda Archives of San Diego and the San Diego History Center.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Turning the page to go back in time and preserve decades of the local LGBTQ+ story.
God, what year was this?
As San Diego's first openly gay mayor, he's transported through time.
With folks that paid a higher price than I had to, but they did what we're all supposed to do, which is to leave things a little bit better.
October 15th marks the start of LGBTQ History Month, recognized nationally since 1994.
When you walk in here, of course we salute Hillcrest, and then you start knowing the history of our community.
Nicole Murray Ramirez is the Human Relations Commission chair and helped curate the exhibit. He shares what each rainbow panel means.
You have to remember, it wasn't until 1976 that we weren't even legal. We could be arrested and be sent to mental hospital.
From trailblazers to acceptance, the exhibit honors Harvey Milk, the civil rights leader who served in the Navy and was stationed in San Diego.
I got to work with him during the Nita Bryant homophobic campaigns and the John Briggs. He had the greatest sense of humor.
The journey tells painful stories of seeking bars as refuge in the AIDS epidemic.
AIDS absolutely were dark years.
But you see there's panels of strength and beauty.
What would we do without the arts? The arts would fail if it wasn't for the LGBT. We're everywhere.
And it celebrates San Diego as the first city to create an LGBTQ+ cultural district in Hillcrest.
It's really amazing to me to be in a city that has this for our community.
The exhibit is free and open weekdays through November 5th in City Hall's lobby.
We have been in the fabric of the San Diego community and city and history.
Each panel turns another page, preserving the past for future generations.
I hope they understand that we've been here since the beginning of time.
Even where there aren't legal restrictions, Pride is facing new challenges. Across the country, many major corporations have quietly scaled back Pride sponsorships, citing economic concerns and divisive political climate. That's left some events short hundreds of thousands of dollars. In response, though, communities have stepped in. Cities like Charlotte, St. Louis, and San Francisco have turned to public funding, local businesses, and grassroots donations to keep Pride free and accessible. Now, we're going to head to Charlotte, North Carolina, where a nonprofit found a way to support LGBTQ+ youth.
Time Out Youth is about fitting in.
I think they might say finally.
CEO Sarah McHale says this grant will help more young people do just that. This year, they'll distribute $200,000 through Point Source Youth to people ages 18 to 24 facing barriers to safe housing. The money could be used for a rent payment or even expunging an eviction.
Oh, you need $1,000 to get the eviction off your record, and then it will change your housing opportunities moving forward. We can give them that money to do that.
McHale says the need for this has grown as LGBTQ+ youth are disproportionately impacted by housing instability. According to the National Coalition for the Homeless, 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ+, while only 10% of the general youth population identifies that way. While this money will help, the nonprofit was disproportionately impacted by cuts to diversity, equity, and inclusion last year.
We are in place because we don't have government entities that are taking care of unhoused young people.
So even with this boost in funding, many of the changes need to come from policy. The North Carolina General Assembly is back on Monday. McHale would like to see the conversations fit what she says are the real needs of young people in Mecklenburg County.
I'd like to see that the young people are the focus of the support, not the focus of the attack.
Advocates say one thing is clear. Pride Month not going away. Most anti-LGBTQ+ bills introduced in state legislatures never become law. This Pride Month, the message is mixed. In some states, pride is being challenged, reshaped, and tested. In others, it's growing louder, broader, and more visible than ever. Either way, pride remains what it's always been, a celebration, a statement, and in many places, an act of resistance. For In the News Now, I'm Devin Patton. We'll see you next time.